So I think that we're probably going to be going live here any moment. So yeah, here we are. Welcome everyone to Monday Meets. I am your host, Will Averill. I'm the Director of Communications at the Willow, and I have got with me Kelsey Gill. Hi, Kelsey.
Hello.
Hi, welcome. Very excited to have everybody here. Kelsey and I are going to talk a little bit about shelter services, what we do there, what her kind of daily life is like, and what kind of challenges and successes are there with our shelter. As per usual, if you have any questions, I am kind of keeping an eye on the Facebook page, so feel free to ask questions on the Facebook comment feed. Just put your question in the comments, and we will try to address those either as we're going through or at the end. Also, if you have any thoughts or any ideas about anything that we're doing here and you'd like more information, you can always feel free to contact our 24-hour hotline. The number is 785-843-3333, or give us a shout at willowdvcenter.org, our website, where there's a ton of information on all of our services, including shelter. So the shelter is for a large part what people think we are as an organization. It is sort of the primary focus of the initial incarnation of the Willow, back when it was the Women's Transitional Care Center, Women's Transitional Care Services, and it is still a fundamental and I think defining part of what we do at the Willow. So, Kelsey, thank you for joining us to talk about it. Could you just go ahead and start with kind of what's your title, how did you get involved with the Willow, and what was your kind of early journey like?
Sure. So my name is Kelsey, and I work at the Willow in the emergency shelter. And so my title is Assistant Director of Shelter Services. And I initially started at the Willow as an intern probably 4 years ago now. So I was an intern for a summer, and then I volunteered for a few months. And then really during my internship, that's where I fell in love with the Willow and the work that the Willow does, but also all the staff at the Willow. All the advocates are really amazing people. And so I really loved being here and wanted to be a part of that. So then I interned, I volunteered, and then I got hired on as the art program coordinator. And then a few months after that, I became the lead advocate, and then now I'm in the role that I'm in now.
Okay, great. So you have you're the majority of your journey. You have been you in the on the direct service side of things at the shelter. Okay, great. Let's just talk about for someone who doesn't really know much about the Willow at all, but knows that we have an emergency shelter. Can you kind of talk us through what is that process like? If someone needs our services, what's the usual route that they get in contact? What happens then? And what is a stay at the shelter like?
Sure. So our initial contact is always over the hotline. So that number that you gave out at the beginning, that is our crisis line or our hotline. It's 24 hours. And so that's always our initial contact for folks who are needing shelter services. And so we have like a phone interview where we're, talking about their situation, what their needs are. And then basically we can get them into our emergency shelter. And then once they're in shelter, we do the initial intake, the paperwork that we need while they're in our services. And then really we pair every survivor up with an advocate. And so that's really their go-to person while they're here. And we'll really, stand beside them as much as they want us to during their journey of healing and, working on goals that they want to accomplish while they're with us. And so we meet with them basically as much as they want us to. And they get to decide what their goals are. We don't decide that for them. So we're empowerment-based advocacy. So we're really trying to help them, decide what they want to do and where they want to go and just support them throughout that process.
Nice, nice. So empowerment-based advocacy, when you say that, it means that rather than dictating what they should do, we kind of work with them to give them the information that they need. What kind of ways will that manifest itself? What sort of services do we help people? Do we help them kind of figure out how to get assistance with?
Yeah. So while they're here, when we talk about empowerment-based advocacy, we talk about, us as advocates, we work in the field of domestic violence, but being empowerment-based means that we recognize that we're not the expert in anyone's situation, but the survivor is actually the expert. And so while we want to be with them and help them, decide what decisions they should be making or what they want to do, we don't ever make decisions for them or even try to influence the decisions that they make. So really just trying to give them that power and control over their life. And so really that goes for anything, housing, employment, and sometimes we just have conversations about, the pros and cons of every situation. And then they get to decide what they want to do based on that. So really just being there to support them through that. And have lots of conversations about, the things that they want to do and the things that they definitely don't want to do.
And that sort of advocacy, again, for anyone who's not familiar with the Willow overall, is something that we not only do for people who are in need of immediate shelter, but we also have available in the community. So that is something that those services can be offered not only for those who are staying with us, but for those who don't necessarily need an emergency place to stay, but may just need some assistance with things like rent, utilities, may need some assistance with working towards getting further educational opportunities or job opportunities. And we have a community advocacy program that does a similar sort of thing. So that advocacy filters not just into the shelter, but into all the other programs that we do. But it started fundamentally with the shelter. Can you kind of tell us, you've been there, you've been around for a little while now, how that whole shelter situation has changed over the course of your time with the Willow?
Sure. So really, I would say now we focus a lot on trauma-informed care and having a low barrier model within our shelter. So before, when I started, we didn't really consider ourselves like a trauma-informed shelter stay, but now we definitely do. So that means that we have changed a lot of our policies, a lot of our procedures, and a lot of our day-to-day interactions with survivors in our shelter. So really just meeting them where they're at and understanding that everyone that walks in to our shelter has experienced trauma. And so really being considerate of that and all the things that come along with that trauma, and just being respectful of that process. And yeah, just their journey and being understanding of that.
Yeah, and we talked a little bit when I spoke last week with Alicia. We kind of went into a little detail about trauma informed care and low barrier, and how all of that has really changed that relationship. Because in the beginning, it could inadvertently, despite our best intentions, be punitive for people and come off being another repeat of the cycle of power and control that a lot of survivors feel. So yeah, she was saying that she was talking a little bit about that journey as well, and I think it's fundamentally a really important step in the direction that we've gone. We obviously our services, both shelter and in the within the community, are completely confidential and free of charge. So we can't really. I know you can't get. We have to always kind of maintain confidentiality as an important part of what we do. But can you kind of tell us, within those confines of confidentiality, of a time when there has been sort of a real success that you've seen in shelter that has really helped someone out?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like in general, there has been so many successes while I've been here. I feel like in Lawrence, especially, employment can be hard, housing can be really difficult. And so navigating those situations with survivors is really important. And so, I mean, anytime that we can find housing for someone, that's a huge success. But also, I think, having a longer shelter stay also has allowed a lot of folks, I think, to, process the things that they've been through and really work through all of their emotions and all their feelings about, the things that they have experienced. And so I think, I kind of lost where I was going with that. But I think that that's a huge success, right? Giving
Yeah.
someone time to, think about the things that they've experienced and process them before they have to worry about getting a job or finding housing, and doing all of those things. And so I think that has been beneficial too, is getting them help with kind of their emotional state and stuff like that before they have to immediately try to do all of these bigger things in their life.
So while the housing is a fundamental part of making that next step, the emotional journey and working through and healing that trauma that occurs is equally as important from a psychological emotional perspective. Is kind of what you, and you've had some success doing that.
Absolutely. And I think that that sets a person up for, more success in the long run, having dealt with that and, having the time and the space to do that.
What do you feel like are some of the biggest challenges working in shelter?
The biggest challenges, I think resources. I feel like that's something that as an advocate, we're always looking for all of the resources, and we want to we want to use all of the resources all of the time, and that is really needed and that's really important. And so I think that's something that is always a challenge, and I'm sure other agencies experience that same thing. In regards to just being in shelter, I think you never know really what your day is going to look like. And so, but sometimes I think that's the beauty in what we do, and can really embrace that as well.
Yeah. Well, I think I just need you to know now I'm a huge fanboy of all of you who work in shelter regularly. I think it takes really a lot of passion and talent and a great way with people to be comfortable in that role and to be able to handle that sort of ever changing situation. So I'm actually really curious what you would consider to be, if someone was interested in being an advocate, what would you say are the best qualities that people can have or that they can work on and develop to help them with
that? Definitely, I think qualities of an advocate. So I would say you have to be caring, and compassionate and really understanding. And I think that goes along with that trauma-informed care, is knowing, to meet people where they're at and don't expect too much out of them. And that takes time to kind of, I guess, I don't know. But yeah, I think you have to be super caring and super compassionate and really care about the work that you're doing. Definitely.
Okay. I know that one situation which kind of comes up repeatedly, and I think this probably has an effect on both advocates and on the survivors, is that sort of the challenges that come with the shelter situation, with a group living situation. I know that when we talking a little bit with Alicia last week, we were talking about that intake process and that letting people know that this is a group living situation. It's not going to be like the current situation that you were in. It's got its own set of challenges. Like, we let people know, sort of what the situation will be when they step into it. But are there any sort of hints or tips or helpful advice you could give someone who was maybe considering a move into a group living situation?
Yeah, and I think it's really important on the phone with them to let them know, be transparent about the situation, because they're definitely going to find out once they get here. So being as open as possible with them, and letting them know, it is group living. And I always think, I can't imagine having 20 roommates and what that would be like. So that is a difficult situation for any person, I feel. And so letting them know it might be challenging, but advocates are really there to support them, and, walk beside them and try to make it work while they're here. The most important thing is that they're safe here. And so that's everyone's priority in shelter. And so we're going to do our best to make sure that you're safe while you're here. And really, if tough things happen, difficult situations happen, advocates are there to support you through that, because we want everyone to be successful while they're here. That's our ultimate goal. So we're going to do everything we can to try to make that as easy as possible.
Nice. Just want to take a moment to remind everyone, if you have any questions for Kelsey about shelter, we can certainly try to address them. You can put them in the comment box on the Facebook Live. If you have any questions and you're watching the recording of this, you can leave them on the YouTube comment section or send us an email at admin@willowdvcenter.org, and we'll get somebody to answer your question as quickly as possible. So again, thank you for tuning in. Just a few more questions though before we head out. We talked a little bit about, you talked a little bit about low barrier and trauma-informed care just now. Can we maybe talk a little bit about how that looks in practice? Because I know for a little while when we first moved towards low barrier and trauma-informed care, there was a little bit of uneasiness because people weren't quite sure how that translated into day-to-day life, like what that meant for them working as an advocate in shelter regularly. Do you feel like you've kind of gotten a handle on that? And if so, could you kind of explain how that works on a day-to-day basis?
Sure. So I don't know if I totally have a handle on it. No, I think that it's always a learning process. And so I think we always have to be questioning, our policies, our procedures, our interactions day to day with survivors, and always be questioning that to make sure that we're, benefiting them. It's really about being survivor centered and meeting them where they're at. And so every day I just feel like it, it's really important that our interactions, like one-on-one interactions, like those are super meaningful, and trying to build rapport with the folks that enter shelter and building those relationships with them. I think that's a big part of trauma-informed care. Being someone that they can trust while they're here, I think is hugely beneficial in shelter services for sure. Outside of that, I think, in regards to our policies and procedures, trauma-informed care, a lot of times people think that maybe that means that we don't have rules and we don't have expectations, and that's really not the case. So we still have those expectations of folks who enter our shelter, but really we want to be collaborating with them. So instead of us saying, you can't do this, so just don't do it again, really it's saying, we can't do this because it's a safety concern, but like, I am, willing to make a plan with you. How can we work around this so it doesn't happen again? But, making sure that their needs are still being met, because that's probably why they're doing that thing. And so really just having more of a collaboration between advocate and survivor to work around any safety concerns and stuff like that. I hope that makes sense.
No, that totally makes sense, and really appreciate it. I mean, I think that certainly the theory behind it, is easier to understand because we all took a training on it, and the fundamentals of what trauma-informed care is, and looking at trauma being creating a series of adaptive behaviors that people have used that could potentially be problematic in a group living situation, but it is their way of sort of asking for what they need, and being able to get some response. And so looking at that as a chance to build a further relationship is I can understand that in theory, but sometimes in practice I think it can be maybe a little more tricksy to integrate into what you're doing. So I appreciate that. Now that we talked a little bit about this beforehand, and that's why I understand it's a difficult question, but in terms of like what changes would you like to see at the Willow and in the shelter kind of moving forward? This could be, again, anything from like capacity to, you said talking about having enough things and scarcity and being always kind of a fear. And but what would you like to see more of at the Willow?
I think just continuing to focus on trauma-informed care and what that really looks like within our agency. So that way we can ensure that, we're giving the best services that we can to the survivors who come in our doors. And I think in really just any services that we provide for folks. So continuing to have that conversation and integrate that in really every part of our everyday life, I think.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's great. And then, is there anything else that you'd like to talk about? I always give people a second to shout out if they wanted to give any shout outs to anybody or anything, family, friends, pets, projects, anything you want to mention or give a shout out to?
I don't think so.
Okay. That's fair. That's fair. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Kelsey. We really appreciate your time. If you have any questions again on any of this, you can feel free to send us a message on Facebook, or if you're watching a recording, you can feel free to send us an email to admin@willowdvcenter.org. That'll be on the YouTube description, so just look below you there. And if you have any questions, you can always call our hotline, 785-843-3333. There is an advocate there 24/7, so you will have a phone answered by somebody who can help you. So thank you so much, Kelsey, and we will see you all later. Everybody have a good Monday. Yeah. All right. Bye.